session at 10:43 in the morning, a little before the listed start time. A few minutes in, we're dealt pocket nines under the gun. I raised to 15. The hijack is an opponent who's a return visitor. He was at the last meetup game that I hosted here. He 3-bets to 50. The cutoff cold calls a 3-bet off his 100 big blind stack. We're getting a great price with a hand that'll likely be best if we can hit a set. I call for 35 more to close the action. We're going 3 ways to the flop out of position. The dealer puts out 8-6-4 with 2 spades. We've got an overpair with some backdoor draws. It's a relatively strong hand, but either or both opponents could reasonably have us beat given the pre-flop action. It's a bit of a dicey situation. I check. The hijack may not like seeing all these low cards on the board. He checks with what I imagine are 2 overcards. The cutoff could have a variety of hands, including a higher pocket pair than us, like 10s or jacks, 2 overs, or maybe even a set if he cold called a 3-bet with a small pocket pair, wanting to get involved in a pot while I'm at the table. The cutoff bet's 90. We kind of only beat bluffs and flush draws. Still, it seems premature to fold at this juncture, but the board isn't likely to get better for us. There are a number of bad cards that we won't want to see on future streets, including spades and any card higher than a 9. Even some cards lower than a 9 could cause us trouble. I make a move, check raise into 300 to ideally win this without any resistance. If the cutoff jams for his remaining 150, I'll have to call off with hopes of being up against a flush draw. The hijack folds, all but confirming my suspicions that he only had 2 overs. The cutoff doesn't make us wait too long, he folds as well. We start off the session with a situation that was a little tricky to navigate, but it results in us winning a nice pot immediately. Shortly after, we look down at ace-queen offsuit on the button. Player in middle position min raises to 10. The hijack calls. We can't allow these people an opportunity to see a flop for $10 while we're in position with cards this big. I 3-bet to 35. The middle position player folds. The hijack isn't going anywhere. He calls for 25 more. We're heads up. The flop comes queen jack 8 with 2 clubs. It's very coordinated with a flush draw out there and a straight already possible. The hijack checks. I mostly put my opponent on a small pocket pair, or maybe some medium to low suited connectors after he only called the small initial $10 raise. I don't think that we have too much to worry about. I check back to possibly induce a bluff from the opponent on the turn and keep the pot manageable since I'll pretty much never have the nuts. The turn is the 3 of hearts. It's a total blank. I like seeing it. The hijack bet's 35. We should be best, and I want to keep the opponent's bluffs in. I just called a wager. The river is the 9 of hearts, completing the backdoor flush draw and putting 4 to the straight on board. It's about the worst card in the deck. The hijack doesn't seem to be too concerned about me having a straight or flush. He bets 140. I'm trying hard to think of a hand that we can beat that the opponent would play this way. Maybe he's getting out of line with a missed club draw. If he has the heart to make an elaborate bluff against me on this run out, he deserves the pot. I'm trying harder not to pay people off in these types of spots because too often they have it when they bet large on the river. I fold, showing that we're letting go a top. The hijack is nice enough to show for you guys that he smashed the 6 cards straight with king 10 offsuit. I get let off the hook easy and probably lose the minimum to stay in Profitville while the opponent wins the pot. Next we're dealt 10-9 suited in the hijack. Under the gun +1 raises to 15. This is a fun hand to play in position that'll connect with a lot of flops. I call. The big blind also calls. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes 10-10-8 with 2 diamonds. We've got trips and multiple opponents. The big blind makes a very gutsy maneuver as he folds even though he had the option to check. I'm immediately disappointed to lose a potential customer after flopping a monster. Perhaps I need to work harder on my poker face. Under the gun +1 picks up the slacks. He bets 10. There's another coordinated flop with lots of draws out there. I'm not going to slow play a hand this strong. I raised to 30 to build the pot. The opponent may not believe our story. He re-raises to 90. 75% of the 10s are accounted for, and I doubt that we'd get re-raised by a full house so early on. I'm having a hard time imagining that we're actually beat. I call for 60 more to keep under the gun +1's bluffs in. The turn is the 5 of clubs. It's a brick. After we called the re-raise on the flop, the opponent may have realized that we probably have a monster. He shuts down and checks. We don't beat the hands that he was representing on the flop, like better 10s, and the opponent likely can't call a bet of ours if he was making a wild move as a bluff like I suspect. I check back to put some doubt in the opponent's mind about the strength of our hand. Could look like we only have a flush or straight draw. The river is the 6 of clubs. The backdoor flush draw gets there, as does 9-7, but I'm not too worried about either of those. After taking a short hiatus, under the gun +1 is ready to pretend like he's got something again. he makes a fairly large bet of 140. Raising doesn't make much sense if the opponent is bluffing, like I strongly suspect. I call, putting only one chip out there. There's no need to put out more chips in that, since they're going to be coming back to us anyway. We don't even get the joy of seeing what Under the Gun +1 made his bluff attempt with, as he mucks face down quickly before I'm able to convince him to reveal it for the vlog. I show him and the rest of the table that it was a very good flop for us. We win one more pot to put us up several hundred on the day. I make my way over to the second table, where Sarah O'Connor is sitting directly on our left. She's the one who made the beautiful gifts for my kids. We pick up 10-9 of hearts once again. This time we're under the gun. I need to give Sarah an opportunity to get me. I raise to 15. Sarah won't be letting this chance slip away. She calls. There could be some dangerous flops for us if she truly has the jiggities. The button won't be allowing us to see 3 cards that easily. He lays down the law with a 3-bet to 50. The way I see it, we're free-rolling this 10-9 of hearts. After winning with the same combo earlier, I call for 35 more. Sarah calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop out of position. The dealer puts out King 8-4 with 2 hearts. We've got a flush draw with potential to hit a backdoor straight. I check. Sarah isn't playing this the traditional way, which would be to check to the pre-flop aggressor. Instead, she takes the initiative and bets 60. This clears out the button. He folds. I'm content to see a turn for this price. I call, wondering if Sarah's manifestation about stacking me is going to come to fruition right now. The turn is the 5 of hearts, giving us the flush. It's very possible that Sarah has the higher flush and bets small on the flop with the better draw. We could certainly be drawing dead. I check. Sarah might be trying to milk me, or maybe she's trying to induce a raise. She makes a tiny bet of 60 again. She has 687 total. Maybe we're beat, maybe we're not. One thing I know is that the river won't help us improve. It's time to see if Sarah really has anything that she can double up through me with.
All in.
It's a relief not to get snapped off by a hand that has us dead. Sarah's probably running past vlogs through her head to see if she can remember something I did or said that might help her make the right decision here. Maybe she's wondering if I'm trying to bully her just because she was trash talking a bit online. I've definitely had similar thoughts myself when there are interesting table dynamics at play, but in reality, I'm just playing this hand how I'd play it against anyone else. After 30 seconds, Sarah makes the call. We give her the bad news that we've got the flush. We almost surely have the winner. Now, all we need to know is what cards we need to fade.
Sarah, you want to flip it over now?
Yeah, it's fine.
Sarah reveals her top pair and draw to the second nuts. It's clear why she was tanking. Whether she wins or loses, it's kind of a cooler. There are 7 hearts remaining in the deck that'll give the opponent the win. That's a decent amount. The river is another 5 pairing the board. Our 10 high flush holds and a huge all-in pot. Part of me feels bad, but I'm also a little confused about how I could have won. It's almost as if the deck didn't care at all about our manifestations. There are plenty of good food options at Hard Rock, but there's no need to call a server over since Under the Gun +1 is all full after eating a big slice of humble pie. A pile of chips comes our way to get the stack up to $22.50 on the day. We're in 4-figure profit territory. We're still at the same table when we pick up pocket queens Under the Gun. I kick things off with a raise to 15. Despite us having a narrow opening range from early position, the player in middle position 3-bets to 45. The big blind is a younger viewer named Daniel. He cold calls a 3-bet, which is something I don't expect to see much. We're supposed to pure call against what should be some very strong ranges. I call for 30 more. We're going 3 ways to the flop. The dealer puts out Jack 8-4 Rainbow. We've got an overpair, but pocket jacks is a hand that either opponent could have, and we still lose to aces and kings. The big blind surprisingly leads for 75. When both me and the pre-flop 3-better have overpairs in our ranges, the big blind needs to have a monster to make this play. Still, I'm not folding. I call, hoping the other player folds behind us so that we can play the rest of this hand in position. Instead, the middle position player calls. I have no idea if we're best or not. This is a situation that doesn't come up very often. The turn is the 9 of spades. We at least pick up the straight draw and we have removal to the nuts. The big blind didn't like his flop bet getting called in 2 spots. He slows down and checks. I'm concerned that he has plans to check raise. I'm also concerned that the other opponent could have us beat. I check. What the middle position player does right now will be very telling. He checks back, indicating that he probably doesn't have a set, but there's still a small possibility that he could have aces or kings, and is playing cautiously for pot control. The river is the 9 of hearts pairing the board. The big blind doesn't want to risk everyone checking again. He makes a somewhat small bet of 130. I like this sizing because if the big blind had a really strong hand that beat us, I imagine that he'd make a bigger bet. With this size, it seems like he's trying to get the showdown somewhat cheaply with something decent, but it doesn't feel like trips are better. I call, the middle position player can't continue, he folds, the big blind isn't all that confident in his hand, he stalls a bit before revealing that he has king-jack offsuit. He made a speculative call pre-flop that got himself into trouble after flopping top pair that's no good. We win another decent pot, we're running well and getting fortunate runouts, it's a great combination. Next we're dealt queen 3 offsuit under the gun +1 in a 9-handed bomb pot. Each player puts in $25 pre-flop and we go straight to a flop. It comes queen 10-4 rainbow. We've got top pair, but with 8 opponents, it's tough to know if we're best. It checks to us. With so many players seeing the flop, we don't actually have to bet much to clear out a large portion of the field. I bet only 50. There are a few players who don't want to abandon their hands for that price. The middle position player and under the gun both call. 3 of us are seeing the turn. The dealer puts out the queen of hearts, giving us trips, but putting a flush draw out there. Under the gun checks. I was worried that we could have kicker problems, but now that a third queen is accounted for, it's less likely that either opponent will be holding one, and it's more probable that we're up against a lower pair or straight draw. I bet 175 to charge the other 2 players if they want to see a river. The middle position player folds. The player under the gun isn't as quick to let go. After pondering his options for a while, he makes the call. This is becoming a large pot. It's down to heads up. The river is the jack of diamonds. It's an interesting card because the flush draw misses, but some straights get there. The thing is that the straights that got there were the most unlikely ones, like ace king, king 9, and 9-8. For the opponent to have a straight, he would have had to have called a turn bet with just a gutter while the board was already paired and there was a flush draw out there. It's really unlikely that the opponent would have made such a speculative call unless he also had a heart draw. Under the gun checks. It's a lot more likely that we're up against a hand containing a jack or 10. I attempt to extract maximum value from those combos we're beating with about a 450 to make it look like I'm trying to bluff my way to victory with something that isn't all that strong. The opponent folds before I'm able to cut the chips. We don't get paid off in this instance. It's a friendly game though, so I show that we actually had it. We win one more large pot. It's been smooth sailing up to this point. The very next hand we pick up king 5 suited after straddling from under the gun. A player in middle position named Jimmy Barkin raises to 30. Jimmy's an interesting guy. He's another YouTuber who makes videos about yoga. He's actually considered the #1 Bikram yoga instructor in the world. Small blind calls. We're getting a discount. I call for 20 more. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes king 8-3 with 2 diamonds. We've got top pair and a draw to the second nuts. Small blind checks. I'm always going to give the pre-flop raiser an opportunity to bet. I check it to him. He's not worried about having multiple opponents. The player in middle position bets 60. It's too much for the small blind to continue. He folds. We have a strong hand and we don't need to raise for protection since we have a great chance to improve. I call to keep the opponent in with worse holdings and to not pile in money in the instances when we're behind. It's down to heads up. The turn is the queen of diamonds giving us the flush. I briefly consider betting because this turn could slow down the opponent if he only has 1 pair. But I check. Maybe the opponent doesn't have much, or maybe the third diamond is scaring him, and rightfully so. He checks back. The river is the 8 of clubs pairing the board. We're downgraded slightly, but that's not very concerning after the opponent checks back the turn, and we have removal of full houses. I'm going to play this as if we have the nuts. I bet 250, which puts Jimmy in the blender. He's thinking long and hard about this one. He must have something pretty high up in his range. After a full minute, the opponent makes the fold. I show him that we had it. Jimmy lets me know that he got away from a hand that I would have expected him to call with. Jimmy owns me with a terrific fold, laying down top 2 pair and saving himself $250. After seeing that kind of discipline, I go directly to his YouTube channel called The Barkin Method of Hot Yoga, and I subscribe in hopes that he'll start doing some poker vlogs soon so that I can learn not to call large river bets. In this one, we're dealt 6-5 suited on the button. Under the gun +1 raises to 15. The middle position player and cutoff both call. It's fun to play suited connectors from in position. I call to get in the mix. Small blind and big blind call. 2/3 of the table is seeing the flop. The dealer puts out ace 8-5 with 2 spades. Not all that exciting yet. Just wait. Everyone checks. The turn is the 6 of spades giving us bottom 2 pair, but there's a flush draw out there and some straight possibilities. Checks to the cutoff. He makes a tiny bet of 15. This almost feels like a blocker bet that the opponent might make with 1 pair and a draw like 8-7 without spades, or maybe king-queen offsuit with a spade. It doesn't seem like we're beat. I raise a 75 to deny equity when we're ahead. Folds back to the cutoff. He'd like to see the river card. He makes the call for 60 more. It's down to heads up. The 6 of hearts comes, giving us a sneaky backdoor full house. The cutoff checks. We've got the green light to go for value.
175?
Right, I got confident.
175.
What did you have, 85? Yeah, I guess I got lucky.
The opponent indeed had 8-5 suited. He had a better 2-pair than us on the turn, but we drilled the 2-outer to seal the lead from him. Still, he got away without paying us any additional money. Here we're dealt Jack 10 suited under the gun +2. The player under the gun raises to 20. I'm a big fan of suited Broadway cards. I call. The hijack button and big blind call. We're going 5 ways to the flop. I like interacting with the viewers at the table and allowing them an opportunity to help me will out a board that'll be beneficial for us. The players on both sides of me have already folded. I've got a few questions for the player on our right.
Want to sweat? Any good luck?
Yeah.
You sure? Any good luck?
I tried to.
The player on our right had about as much confidence as me during my freshman year of high school. I show the player on our left named Lee our starting hand instead. I'm not 100% sure that Lee's going to bring us much luck either though, since right after giving him a peek, I knock over my stack of chips. We're not off to a great start, but the flop comes King Queen 7 with 2 clubs. It's not bad, it's just not especially great since there's a flush draw out there for a suit that we don't have. At least we've got potential though. We all check. The turn is the 5 of diamonds. It's a brick. Perhaps under the gun has been slow playing a monster. He all of a sudden bets 50. If under the gun has a set or 2-pair, we could possibly win a big pot from him if an ace or 9 comes out. I call partially because it's okay strategy to continue with our Broadway draw, but mostly because I want to test out Lee's hand sweating abilities. The hijack button and big blind fold quickly. It's down to heads up. The river is the 9 of spades, giving us the stone cold nutter butters. It's a beautiful card that our opponent might not have expected us to hit. It's possible our straight draw isn't so hidden after all though, because under the gun slams on the brakes and checks. Usually if I check back flop and call a turn bet with a draw on this board, I'll tend to have clubs a decent portion of the time. The flush draw obviously missed, but I'd go with a large overbet of 250 to make it look like I'm trying to bluff with a couple of clovers that didn't get there. There are some fun dynamics at play, including the fact that the opponent knows I let Lee sweat our hand from the beginning. How often is Lee going to see our cards and we happen to have the nuts? Clearly, we know that'll be the case 100% of the time when Lee's watching, but to the opponent it should seem way more likely that I've got nothing and I'm making a last-ditch effort to take down the pot in order to have a laugh with Lee. Lee's not laughing though. He's probably doing his best not to give anything away as the opponent tanks. A full minute goes by, we don't get any indication as to what under the gun is going to do. Lee and I start communicating telepathically. Over and over, I'm saying call in my head. My internal voice is naturally pretty low. Lee picks up on this and starts harmonizing in a major third with his chant. After a minute and 45 seconds of being in the tank, under the gun makes the call. We show that we got there on the river with a little help from Lee.
I used the right guy. I might be good luck.
Our big bet gets paid. With another nice pot coming towards us, we're up almost 2,500. Later we're dealt pocket queens in the hijack at the 7th table of the day. I raised to 15. The button knows we could be opening with a pretty wide range since we're in one of the later positions. He 3-bets to 45 to give himself an opportunity to win pre-flop. We're not going away that easy though. And neither is the small blind. He comes in out of nowhere with a cold 4-bet jam for $230. I'm more than happy to get it in for that amount. Just in case the button actually has aces or kings, I only call the 230 rather than 5-bet to isolate. Calling for 215 more should look scary enough that the button will get the hint he won't have us beat if he's got something worse than queens. The button folds, it's heads up. The small blind must have been in the mood to gamble. He reveals that he 4-bet ripped it with ace-jack offsuit. We're in pretty decent shape with our premium pair, but it's always a bit nerve-wracking during any all-in, especially when the opponent has an overcard and a suited combo. The flop comes King-Jack 6 with 2 spades. The opponent improves, but he hits the pair that doesn't give him the lead. We're safe for now. The turn is the Queen of Hearts. We smash his set. The small blind can only win by hitting one of 4 10s. Sometimes they get there.
There you go. Oh, wow. Nice hand, nice hand.
Look at that.
The small blind hits runner straight to double up against me. I've been getting great runouts all day, so it's only fair to lose one back. At least it doesn't hurt too badly, it just makes a small dent in our profit anyway. We've all been playing for a long time, and I've got the championship event coming up. It's time to rack up a big